where the points that this lesson has to offer. I'm going to talk about Balak and Balaam, but it's not going to be just Balak and Balaam. We're going to be talking about Abraham. We're going to talk about Moses. We're going to talk about Sihon, King Sihon, King Og. We're going to talk about the Moabites, the Midianites, which is very important. These all things, they all have a link together. And what I want to do in a sense is I want to encourage us to learn from the historical disobedience of God. These things happened. There's a lesson to be learned. And I tell you, we could probably spend several hours just discussing the lessons that could be learned from the Israelites going toward the promised land. They're on the west side of Jordan. They haven't crossed over yet. And so much has happened. So much. It just floors you when you think about all the issues that Moses had to deal with, all the conflicts, all the murmuring, all the disobedience, and all the punishments and all the rewards and all these things that the Israelites have already seen. They had to face the serpent. They murmured against Midian. Keturah's son, Keturah was of the Levites. Him and a couple other ones, 250 of the princes, they took and said, Moses, you take too much upon yourself. And they all were destroyed. It's just thousands of Jews, thousands, have already lost their lives. And they have seen God at work beyond anything that we've ever seen. I tell you, they with their own eyes, they've already been told now they're not going to cross over. They have been so disobedient. They've been numbered. There's thousands of them, and yet they just continue to be disobedient. What I want to know, what I want to learn from this too, is a purpose of this is to stay alert to sin. Stay alert. Be awake. Don't sleep like 1st, 2nd Thessalonians. Some sleep at night. And yet we need to be of the day. Our eyes need to be wide open. We need to choose God's wisdom over man's wisdom. Every day, every second, every moment. And I tell you, and it's easy to get caught up in other men's writings. Oh, it's so easy. And some of them have the most silverest tongue and handwritings you ever seen. Gold laced. You would like, that's awesome. I know guys that can write, they're phenomenal. Kind of would love to be able to write the way they do. Well, we have to be so careful. So very careful. I'm in hot discussions, if you will, with SDA and a couple people who call them Israel. They don't call them Seventh-day Adventists. And the truth is so blatant there, and yet they like to rail on me, call me a liar and everything. But they've been taught by someone's slick method of coming in through a back door, I'll say, and twisting around. And that's important to this lesson, by the way. And the other one is to remain God-centered, not self-centered. Do not become self-centered. We struggle with that. Every single one of us, we struggle. That's why John warned. He said there's three things in the world: lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. When we find ourselves wandering off, we become self-centered. And we've got to be so careful. If we don't learn anything from this lesson, remember this: God's wisdom and be God-centered. They would have saved themselves so much heartache. And they would have been successful in every possible way. In the plowing of their land, the bringing of their animals, bearing animals, their children, everything about them, their health, they wouldn't have been without. But yet, we're just like them. And this is what this lesson is so important. I want to give you the end, the conclusion. And it's Joshua. Remember, Joshua was chosen to take Moses' place. Joshua said this in Joshua 24 and verse 8. And I brought you into the land of the Amorites, which dwelt on the other side Jordan, and they fought with you, and I gave them into your hand that you might possess their land. I destroyed them from before you. Then Balak, the son of Zippor, king of Moab, arose, warred against Israel, and sent and called Balaam, the son of Beor, to curse you. But I would not hearken unto Balaam. Therefore he blessed you still, so I delivered you out of his hand. What do we learn? God brought the Israelites to the Amorites. God defeated the Amorites. And God gave the land of the Amorites to the Israelites. What did Balak? Balak warred against them, wanted Balaam to curse them, but God didn't hearken to Balaam, and God delivered the hand out of Balak. That's the conclusion. But my, oh my, the information from the time they got there till the time God finished is overwhelmingly phenomenal. The more you study it, the more you get into it, you just stand with your jaw dropped. It's that much. And there's so much. People's history is all the way up to here. It's not just they come to this strange land, they beat these people up, they kill them, they destroy them, because they're the ones that instigated it. I don't know if you know that. They were trying to get over to where God told them. And here come these people. They're the ones they're the ones who fought against God. They thought they could defeat them. But we'll get into that. There's just so much I want to just throw out there. I got to slow the brain down. Okay. So we're going to go back in time. Balak had Saul, the son of Zippor, saw what the Israelites had done to the Amorites. And so here's a few facts that I would like to cover about Moabites and Balak and Balaam. Now just remember, Balak and Balaam, King Balak, those names are so close to each other, you kind of get confused. The King Balak and the soothsayer Balaam. But what do we know about them? Well, and you won't have time to read these verses, but I'll be glad to give you a copy of the lesson. The Moabites knew that the Israelites were many. They looked out, and they said they're going to come up and eat up the grass. There's so many. There's just thousands of them. And there was thousands, several hundred thousands. And they knew what the Israelites had already done to the Amorites. King Sihon and King Og were both Amorites. In Joshua, chapter 9, verse 10, he recounts, he said, and all that God did to the two kings of the Amorites that were beyond Jordan, the west side. And this is Joshua still recounting, because this is history. This is something important. He reminds them of what happened there. And in Joshua 12:4, in the coast of Og, king of Bashan, was of the remnant of the giants that dwelt at Ashtaroth and Edrei. The interesting thing about this, they already sent out spies, and they'd already had problems. Said, "Oh, we can't do this. These are monsters." Deuteronomy 3:1 tells us how huge Og was and his people. Og, his bed was 9 cubits long, and no, it was 9 cubits long and 4 cubits wide. Okay, when you go buy a mattress, a 6-foot mattress, long-wise, it's pretty good size. We do that. His mattress was 6 foot wide, and it was 9 cubits long, which makes it 13 and a half foot long. In these shoes, I'm probably about 6'2", twice over me. He could easily take a bowl. He was massive. And could you imagine a 6 foot wide bed for this guy? We could put 3 or 4 of us inside his skin, maybe. He was so huge. I know a guy at work that's big. He's about 6'5". I could step inside of him. He's so big. But you see what's going on then. They're coming up. They've already faced a lot of trials. They've already lost a lot of their kinfolk and their families because of their disobedience. They come up to these people, and all they asked was that they come through the land. But the Moabites were afraid of the Israelites. We find that out in Numbers 22 and verse 4 and 5. It said, Moab said unto the elders of Midian. Now, I want to tell you what Midian is. The Midianites bordered the Moabites. So they were next door neighbors, is what they are. And so Moab said to the elders of Midian, now shall this company lick it all up around about us, as the ox licks up the grass of the field? And Balak, the king of Moabites at that time, said the king, Behold, there is a people come out of Egypt. Behold, they cover the face of the earth, and they abide over against us. Okay. So they were very afraid of them. And I'll help you out to understand why they're a little bit afraid of them. Not only were they massive in number, he even knows some history about them. He knows where they came from. So to know where they came from, he already knows some of the things that God has done for them. But what's interesting, and I want to say this, is that he is more concerned about the numerical number of the people. If I was him, I'd be more concerned about their God, because he's already proven himself. They have done things that a human being would be impossible for. So I would be thinking more about what's their God, his plans. Here's a little interesting information. I said there's history involved here. When Moses escaped out of Egypt, he went to Midian. This is where they are now. He married a woman named Zipporah. So that is telling us that Moses has, and his wife has family in Midian. They're there. They had 2 sons. So there's bloodline connections in Midian for Moses. And this has only been 40 years since he was there, and he went there, and he bringing them out, and they was in the wilderness about 38 years-ish. And now they're going back into that land of where Zipporah's from. So she has bloodline family right there. An interesting note, though, I would like for you to remember, is Jethro said this about the Israelite God. Remember, Jethro met him when he was out in the wilderness. He brought his wife and his 2 children to him. And here's what he said. Now, Jethro is a Midianite priest. Jethro said, "Blessed be the God who had delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians, out of the hand of Pharaoh, who delivered the people from under the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know the Lord is greater than all gods." Get ahead of myself. The word Bel is a Canaanite word for gods. It's not a singular God. They have gods. And we're going to look at that word here in just a minute. So when you see that, then this man, this Jethro, which is Moses' father-in-law, which is Zipporah's father, is a Midianite priest, meets him in the wilderness, brings his children, and says that the Lord is greater than all gods. For in the thing wherein thou dealt proudly, he was above them. An astounding statement, because you know what he does? He goes back to Midian. He takes information with him. So the Israelites, it's not a new people sitting out in this wilderness, out of the borders, and they don't know who they are. They fully are aware of these people that are sitting out there. What is more interesting, which I'm going to bring this up in a minute, is the Israelites know God the best. So, why then are the Moabites afraid of the Israelites? Because King Sihon, an Amorite, has already defeated the Moabites. The Israelites come along, and by the way, all they asked him was, can we just go through your land? We're not going to mess with anything. We just need passage. He said, no. King Sihon, he comes down, and he said he takes war against them. That's his mistake. He chose to do that. They wanted a peaceful travel, but he wouldn't let them have it. But see, he was already brassy. He's a king, part of the lineage of the people around. He had backings. He had King Og with him to support him. Well, King Og won't get his share. So he comes down, and they defeat him. Now the Moabites they're afraid, so they try to get their neighbor, the Midianites, to join forces with them to fight against the Israelites. Because Sihon had already defeated the Moabites. They were under his rule. So yeah, they're afraid of him. And so here we go into, and you can read about these in Numbers 21 and in Numbers 22. Most of my parts is coming out of 21 through 23 Numbers, and it's very easy to read. And the Israelites defeated the giants. Joshua chapter 13, verse 12, all the kingdom of Og and Bashan, which reigned in Ashtoreth and Edrei, who remained of the remnant of the giants, for those did Moses smite and cast them out. So here we are. They have already come through. They have defeated these people that were undefeatable, and yet they're standing there, camping out at the borders of Moab. Now the king is worried. Balak, very interesting, is first mentioned in Numbers chapter 22. Now he's king of the Moabites, and the Moabites are descendants of Lot through an incest relationship with his daughters. You recall that. So here we have the Moabites, who are kin to all these people, and yet, of course, you know, over time you can get away from God. You end up being whatever you want to be, and these were ungodly people. But Balak is a descendant of Lot. And that's found in Genesis 19, where we find out about where Moab came from, the Moabites. So here's what he does. He's afraid. These giants, these people, they have a reputation, and he's wanting some assistance. I think it's interesting, though, what he does. To me, I think it's interesting. He already knows about God. We've already got Jethro, Zipporah's father-in-law, who's already went back. And I know he's told everybody. And by the way, Jethro did offer up an altar, built an altar with Moses, and they offered up a sacrifice. And that's important, and I'll get back to that in a minute. So he calls him out. He calls Balaam. Balaam's going to be an interesting character, a very interesting character. He goes to him. He sends messengers in number 22. He said, there's a people that's come out. They cover the face of the earth, and they abide over against me. In Numbers 22 and verse 7, Balaam is a prophet. But let's talk about that just a second. Balak, the king, is offering him a reward of divination if he'll come and speak words. Okay. So evidently, Balaam is used to being paid for his service. The one who does divination is one who can foresee the future, tell future events. But see, what's interesting about Balaam, he says, I want you to come. I'm not asking you to tell me the future events. I want you to just come and curse them. So Balaam has a reputation for that. So they're willing to pay him for his ability. Do you know there are people today who claim they can see the future too? It's nothing new. This is not a new thing. So he tells them, he said, I want you to come and curse them. So Balaam is a Midianite. He is a descendant of Abraham and Keturah. Because Abraham and Keturah had sons, and one of them was a Median. His name was Median. And that's where your Midianites come from. That's found in Genesis chapter 25. So here, see the connection? Balaam, Balak, the Moabites, all these people have connection with God's people. But the distance and time and their departure from God, not from them. If, say for instance, if one of us departs from this congregation and we move somewhere else and we become ungodly, and we were godly here, we didn't depart from the congregation, we departed from God. You know, people say, well, they left the church. What they've done is they departed from God with an evil heart of unbelief. Hebrews 3 verse 13. So these people have departed from God over time. And God, he has never been mentioned as a prophet of God. He is not a prophet of God. Never. That's not his profession. He is a soothsayer. And soothsayers are false prophets, and they are condemned. They're prohibited amongst the Israelites. So, he is a Mesopotamian soothsayer, according to Joshua 13 and verse 22. So Balak, do you see how this is just a soap opera kind of thing? It's just crazy, isn't it? All these people have some kind of a blood connection, and the Israelites were being friendly, and yet they want to come in and they want to take them out. And they're afraid of him for the wrong reasons. But God's going to show himself and take care of some things. So, the first time he sends the people over to Balak, or Balak sends it to Balaam, he's offering him a reward of divination. And then he says, then he sends him again, and he says, he sends more princes, more honorable than the ones he sent before, and he said, I'm going to promote you to a very great honor. Okay. What does this mean? This is what he says. When God told Balaam, do not go unless they come to your house. If the men come to your house, then you arise and you go with them. Well, okay. He's at his house. They come to his house. Then he goes. There's a piece missing. Balaam's at his house. He went to him. They never come to his house. That's an indication of his heart. And we're going to learn more about that. God did not say go with them, but said if the men call you, rise up and go with them. The men never came to rise up Balaam. He just up and goes, saddled his donkey, and he went with the princes of Moab. That's an indication. You see how things are, people are disobeying God in every direction here. We're just doing whatever we think is pleasant. We're doing whatever satisfies us. We're doing whatever builds our case, makes our future, whatever it is. That's what they're doing. And there's a problem. So, why did Balaam up and go with him? I'm a little bit ahead on this part, but it works out good at the end. I'm going to tell you why he went with them. 2 Peter 2, verse 15 says, which have forsaken the right way and gone astray, following the way of Balaam, the son of Bozrah, who loved the wages of unrighteousness. I love the perfection of this wording. He didn't say he loved the perfection of $1. He didn't say that. He said he loved the wages of unrighteousness. Because there's a lot more involved here than him going there to gather up some money or some honor. There's a lot involved here. It's a heart problem. He's seeking out his own thing. He's self-centered. Remember in the beginning I said, let's be God-centered, not self-centered. But he's seeking for his own glory. And then Jude, verse 11 says, woe to them, for they have gone in the way of Cain, ran greedily after the error of Balaam for reward, and perished in the gainsaying of course. So, I need to say something about the donkey. Okay, I need to say something about that. And I think this is a very interesting point. As he was traveling along, if you notice that there was an angel that kept blocking the donkey that he was on. And so he'd crush his feet or he rebelled against him. So he got in this really narrow spot. And there was nowhere to go. And the donkey lied down on him. And he hits the donkey. And God opened up his eyes so he could see the angel before him with a sword. And the donkey began to speak to Balaam. Okay. Why is that important? I always tell myself, why is that even in this narrative? Why is it in this historical events? I'll tell you why I think. Balaam is not a prophet of God. He has deceived the people. He gets money for soothsaying, just like a lot of people try to do today, and they get rich off of it. But if your donkey is going to start talking to you all of a sudden out of nowhere and you didn't cause it to happen, somebody better be saying, what's going on? But he talks to him like pretty calmly. But I'm thinking, doesn't he know that God is intervening now? And I'm going to tell you in advance to him. I'm going to tell you why. When Balaam begins to speak, he can't speak. It's God that does the speaking. Balaam should have smacked his face and woke up and said, wait a minute. I'm being overrun in a trance with my eyes open, speaking things of God. And what about that donkey? He's already done it once. Now he's doing it to me. I need to change my ways. Would you have changed your ways? I mean, if you're outside and an animal starts talking to you, I'd be like, what? Wait a minute. Something is really got my attention. But see, it was a progression. He didn't just begin to speak God's words. It already happened. He already seen the miracle of it when his own donkey began to speak, and he's speaking of God, and he sees an angel, his eyes, right there with the sword. Maybe God was trying to help him to change, to repent, but he didn't. In essence, he takes him to 3 different places. And in each place, the first 2 times, well, I don't want to get too far. God never told Balak to build altars and to offer sacrifice. Balak does that because Balak gets Balaam to go with him. And he tells, and every place they go, which is, I'm going to tell you something, where they go is going to be mind-blowing. I'm telling you, it's just amazing to me, the brassness, the boldness, the foolishness of these men. Especially Balaam, after he's already had a donkey speak to him, but I'm going to tell you where they go in just a second. It's quite amazing. But God has never intervened to Balak to tell him to build an altar, or Balaam. But in Exodus 18, we find out it's a practice of the Midianites and the Moabites. They made altars and they offered up sacrifices to their gods, plural. They had lots of gods. Canaanites had a lot of gods. Then, so what he does, and notice the wording of this. This is amazing. When it dawned on me, I was like, are these people really that foolish? Are they really that mentally something or another? Blind and hard-hearted? In Numbers chapter 22 and verse 1, see if you catch the key word where they went and built the altar to offer up sacrifices to God. And it came to pass on the morrow that Balak took Balaam and brought him up into the high places of Baal, that he might see the utmost of the people, parts of the people. The interesting fact is, they were at a place where sacrifices were made to Baal, the idolatrous gods. And they're going to make an altar at that place to God? I don't understand the mentality. I would have said, hey, maybe we should do something different. But no, they built 7 altars, and on each altar, they offered up an oxen and a ram. So there was 7 altars and 7 rams. So then Balaam walks off and goes talk to the Lord. Well, he blesses them. God makes him bless them. So they moved to another place. Balak said, come, I pray thee, in Numbers 23, to another place, so that you might see the utmost part of it. So he takes them there to the top of Pisgah. And by the way, the Israelites had already been there. Before they ever come up there, they'd already been to Pisgah. But he said he built 7 altars and offered a bullock and a ram on every altar. Then of course, Balaam goes speaks to God, and God speaks through his mouth. By the way, at the top of Pisgah is where the Moabites, it belongs to the land of the Moabites, and that the Israelites sent messengers to King Sihon asking for passage through his country. So it's from the top of Pisgah. Now, don't you find the irony in that? These righteous people were there at the top of Pisgah, and the Israelite messengers asking for passage, and now here comes this Midianite king offering up altars, an idolatrous worshiper trying to offer offers to God so they could, through the assistance of Balaam, by the way. It didn't work. So, he blesses them a second time. And I'm not going to read all that. So he said, let me take you to another place. And so in Numbers 23, 27, Balak said to Balaam, come, I pray thee, I'll bring thee to another place. Peradventure it will please God that thou mayest curse me from thence. And Balak brought Balaam to the top of Peor. Peor means opening. In Numbers chapter 25 and verse 3, here we do this again, refers to Peor as Baal of Peor. Of course, we already discussed it. Baal means is a general term for Canaanite gods. So they're familiar with the place because that's where they've offered sacrifices to their own gods. By the way, Baal means Lord, Master, or ruler. So they offered sacrifices already to their own Lord, Master, and ruler, and now he built an altar to try to work with God. I've got a scripture for that, by the way, in just in a minute. Now, if you notice the first two places, Balaam walks off, okay? And God talks to him. The third time, he didn't walk off. It's been suggested, I come up with another one, but some have said that Balaam got Balak all worked up. It takes a lot of work to build 7 altars, to grab 7 oxen and rams, gut them, bleed them, whatever, and then fry them up on the altar. So he got them all worked up. That's a lot of energy. Got him involved in it. The more, if you ever get somebody more interested in what you're doing and more involved, they stay with you. They work with you. They become more one with you. So it's suggested that Balaam did that to get him worked up. Well, and this kind of makes sense to me, and I wanted to throw this in here. Is it possible that they were trying to bribe God to appease him? Look, we're going to offer up sacrifices to you. We are recognizing you as God. So we're going to build these altars. We're going to offer up these animal sacrifices and give you glory and recognition. Well, God cannot be bribed or lie. Numbers 23:19 says he can't lie. But Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 17, for the Lord your God is God of gods, Lord of lords, a great God, a mighty and a terrible, which regards not the persons, nor takes reward. You ain't going to bribe God. You either do what he says or you don't do it. You're not going to change his mind by trying to appease him through 7 altars and 7 animals and try it and do it 3 different places. It's not going to happen. So we understand then that they've tried everything they know to get this to work. Now, I got to recap. I've got to bring you some into what I need to finish. Okay, they come in. They defeated the Amorites, the 2 kings of Amorites. They're coming in to the Moabites. They cannot persuade the Israelites to change their mind. Right now, it is solid. They're not doing it. They have concreted. They've remained steadfast and unmovable doing the work of the Lord. That's where they are. But we're not done yet. We're not finished yet. They've tried offering sacrifices. Maybe, and I'm sure they recognize there's some kin going on here. But here's the thing. This is where I want to summarize and make an application to us. Balaam was a polytheist. That's because he worshiped several gods, the Canaanite gods. Here's what he did. And this is where I want to strongly suggest to each of us, if we think that this could not happen to us, then we are standing on sand, quicksand. We have to be alert to our salvation 24/7. 24/7. We cannot put your guard down. You have to remain, I have to remain as clear as I can, focusing on God. Because here's what's going to happen. In Numbers, you can read this in Numbers 25, 1 through 9. He led Israel into sin by suggesting that Moab's women seduced the Israelites into sexual immorality, and that's how he done it. And it cost 24,000 lives of the Israelites. See how he was trying to defeat them? Oh, they went and defeated giants that stood before them. They defeated them. They become confident. But I want to suggest to you, it may not always be the giants that will defeat us. I've always said this that Satan will come through an avenue that you feel secure about, but he'll take advantage of it. And before you know it, all of a sudden, you didn't expect that. Do you think that he was saying, hey, come in, let the women, Moabite women, hey, we got these Moabite women, check them out. By the way, maybe they even said, hey, you know where the Moabites come from, right? Come on, this is from your family. Look what we got. And the Moabite women went over to them, and the Israelites had fornication with them. Who would have thought that? That was a side hit. That was a hit upside the head. You wouldn't expect that, but they did. In Numbers chapter 31, verse 16, behold, these caused the children of Israel through the counsel of Balaam to commit trespass against the Lord in the matter of Peor, and there was a plague among the congregation of the Lord. You see, Balaam was self-centered. He'd already been offered money. He'd been offered great honor, and he couldn't do it. So he said, now, wait a minute. I've got a lot at stake here. This king is ready to put me in a position I've never experienced. I'm going to be wealthy. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Think. Balaam, think. What are you going to do? Oh, I know what I'll do. I'll hit them where they didn't expect it. I'll get the Moabite women to come down there and entice them Israelite men, and it worked. See, he thought now the Moabites and the Israelites, they've already come together. So, hey, I'm going to get my honor. I might have ad-libbed a little bit there, but I'm trying to think on his level. You try to put yourself in his place. So, and that worked. So, Jesus says, now Jesus even recalls this. Peter recalled it. Jude recalled it. Joshua recalled it. Now, Jesus is going to recall this incident. He says in Revelation 2:14, but I have a few things against thee, because thou hast there them that hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed to idols, and to commit fornication. You see, Balaam wasn't alone. Him and Balak have been arm in arm throughout this whole entire event, and then it says that Balaam convinced Balak to go down and work this route, and it worked. So, here's the end result. Balaam was killed when the Israelites came through. He gained nothing. He lost everything. And I would like to add that, and I'm not a judge, but if he died in the situation that he is, he lost any hope of repentance to God. All because he was self-centered. So Nehemiah and Micah, they even recall the events of what happened. So much going on. So here is what I would like to conclude you with. A lot of information, and I know I probably missed it quite a bit. There's so much. But isn't that a fascinating event of all the things that took place to culminate at that one particular place, and how these people tried to get them to fight against God? They wanted them to go against God, to join with them. And it took some of them out. It did. It worked on some of them. But in the end, Balaam was slain by the Israelites. He lost his life. Balak lost his life. And they didn't protect the Moabites. They lost their lives. All because of what they did, how they rebelled against God. So here's my conclusions. There are giants, and I like to use that analogy. There are giants that we will face. It's hard. But we have to stay alert, not to the big, mean giants who's going to ram at you and try to take you out. We can put up a barrier pretty quick. I saw that coming, so I'm going to get ready for you. But it's the silent, the friendly sins that will get us. Just if we're not on guard, it'll get us every time. And that's what they did. They made friends with them, and the friendly sin is what caused lives. I would like to tell you that there are some things you need to do. Be faithful till death. Be faithful. Set your eyes on things above. Be steadfast and unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. Psalm 970, step by step or something like that. That's perfect. I don't know if he meant to. I'm glad you picked that one. That's very good because step by step they went toward where God intended. He promised them a place, and step by step, but they got sidetracked along the way. And at the end, it was terrible for a lot of people. And I want to read this scripture, and then I want to finish with this. And I love this passage. I'm going to Romans 8. I'm going to read this, and then we'll have an invitation. Wonderful passage to believe, and you'll recognize it as soon as I begin to read. I want to read this passage, Romans 8, verse 37, and then I just want to back up and read a few other ones. This is us. This is Christians. These are godly saints right here that he's saying. See, they wanted to go through, and they had to conquer things to get where they wanted to go. But love this passage. It says, for I am, no, that's not what I want. I want 37. Nay, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him that loved us. And then go back up to verse 35. Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? What shall separate us from the love of Christ? What soothsayer with smooth talking words and friendly invitations to sin can separate us from God? What giant can separate us from God? Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall tribulation, distress, or persecution, famine, or nakedness, or peril, or sword? They face some of those. And then I want to drop down to verse 38. For I am persuaded that neither death, nor life, nor angels, principalities, powers, nor things present, things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor any other creature shall be able to separate us from the love of God, which is in Christ Jesus our Lord. That's your invitation. If you're subject to an invitation, you want to be in that, where nothing can separate you, or if you need encouragement from your fellow saints and children, God's children, we ask you to come forward. We stand and sing.